On the sun-drenched coast of Palm Beach, Florida, squeezed between the turquoise waves of the Atlantic and the calm waters of Lake Worth, stands a mansion that looks like it was plucked from a Mediterranean fairy tale. With its crescent-shaped architecture, towering 75-foot lookout, and walls encrusted with ancient stone, Mar-a-Lago is an unmistakable landmark of American opulence. But to look at Mar-a-Lago today is to see a house divided. Depending on who you ask, it is either a bastion of American strength or a symbol of national scandal. It has been a private palace, a rejected gift to the government, an exclusive social club, and the unofficial headquarters of a political movement. To understand how one house became the most controversial piece of real estate in the world, we have to look past the gold leaf ceilings and into a century-old story of ambition, rejection, and power. Chapter 1: The Heiress and the Quest for Acceptance. Our story begins in the Roaring Twenties. The protagonist is Marjorie Merriweather Post. At just 27 years old, Marjorie became one of the wealthiest women in the world after inheriting the Postum Cereal Company, the business that would eventually become the titan known as General Foods. Marjorie had everything: yachts, jewels, and a fortune that would be worth billions in today's currency. But there was one thing she couldn't buy: the respect of the old money elite. In the 1920s, American high society was ruled by families like the Vanderbilts and the Astors, dynasties built on railroads and real estate. To them, Marjorie was new money. Her wealth smelled of breakfast cereal and ordinary grocery stores. She was invited to their parties, but she was never truly one of them. Mar-a-Lago was her response. Built between 1924 and 1927 at a staggering cost of $7 million, well over $150 million in today's money, it was designed to be the grandest winter home in Florida. Marjorie hired the best architects to create a 128-room Spanish Moorish fantasy. She imported thousands of antique tiles from a castle in Spain, lined the ballroom with gold leaf, and filled the rooms with 16th-century Flemish tapestries. The name Mar-a-Lago is Spanish for sea to lake, a nod to the estate's unique geography. But more than a home, it was a message carved in stone. It was Marjorie telling the elite, "You may look down on me, but you will never be able to look away." Chapter 2: The Invisible World Below. While the history books focus on Marjorie's galas, the reality of Mar-a-Lago was built on a foundation of invisible labor. During the 1930s, as the Great Depression ravaged the country and millions of Americans stood in bread lines, the lights at Mar-a-Lago never dimmed. But for the mansion to function like a dream for the guests, it had to function like a factory for the staff. Beneath the marble floors lay a labyrinthine underground city. This hidden world consisted of massive kitchens, sweltering laundry rooms, and cramped staff quarters. While socialites sipped champagne in the ocean breeze, an army of workers labored in intense heat near industrial boilers and iron stoves. Records show that much of the grueling physical labor, both in the construction of the house and its daily maintenance, was performed by Black and Hispanic laborers. These men and women were the ones who fought the constant battle against the corrosive Florida salt air, polishing the gold and scrubbing the stone for a class of people who were socialized to ignore their existence. This stark contrast between the gilded life above and the grueling labor below remains one of the most significant, though often overlooked, parts of the estate's legacy. Chapter 3: The Gift the Government Refused. As the decades passed, the world changed, but Mar-a-Lago remained frozen in its 1920s grandeur. By the time Marjorie reached her 80s, she faced a dilemma. Her children had no desire to inherit the astronomical taxes and maintenance costs of the 17-acre estate. Marjorie, ever the visionary, came up with a plan to secure the house's legacy forever. In her will, she bequeathed Mar-a-Lago to the United States government. Her dream was for it to become a winter White House, a prestigious retreat where presidents could host foreign dignitaries, much like Camp David, but with Florida sunshine. When she passed away in 1973, the government officially took possession, but the dream quickly turned into a financial nightmare. The National Park Service found that the annual upkeep exceeded $1 million. Furthermore, the Secret Service declared the property a security disaster. It was situated directly under a flight path, bordered by public roads, and surrounded by water on both sides. To make it safe for a president, they would have to turn the palace into a fortress. In 1981, citing the massive taxpayer burden, the government gave the house back to the Post Foundation. For years, the great mansion sat in a state of gilded decay. The paint peeled, the gardens grew wild, and the once vibrant halls grew dusty. It was a masterpiece without a master, and it seemed destined for the wrecking ball. Chapter 4: The Trump Transformation. In the mid-1980s, a young, brash real estate developer from New York named Donald Trump entered the picture. He saw in Mar-a-Lago exactly what Marjorie Coast saw 60 years earlier, a tool for prestige. Trump's acquisition of the property is now the stuff of real estate legend. He initially offered the Post Foundation $5 million, a fraction of its value. They turned him down. In response, he bought the narrow strip of land between the mansion and the ocean for $2 million and publicly threatened to build a hideous home that would block Mar-a-Lago's prized ocean view. With the mansion's value effectively tanked by the threat of losing its view, the Post Foundation surrendered. In 1985, Trump bought the entire estate, including its priceless furnishings, for a total of roughly $8 million. It was one of the greatest distressed property deals in history. However, Trump soon realized the same thing the government had. The house was a money pit. To solve this, he did something radical for Palm Beach. In 1995, he converted the private residence into a profit-based private club. He opened the doors to anyone who could pay the initiation fee. In a move that shook the segregated social fabric of Palm Beach, Trump welcomed Jewish and African American members, groups that had historically been excluded from the old money clubs down the street. While critics argued this was a calculated move to broaden his customer base and spite his rivals, the result was undeniable. Mar-a-Lago was profitable again, and it was again the center of attention. Chapter 5: The Eye of the Storm. The final and most turbulent chapter of Mar-a-Lago began in 2016. When Donald Trump won the presidency, Marjorie Post's dream of a winter White House finally became a reality, though it was far more chaotic than she ever imagined. Mar-a-Lago became a global stage. For 4 years, the world watched as high-stakes diplomacy was conducted on the dining patio. When North Korea launched a missile test in 2017, the president and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe discussed their response in full view of club members who had paid for dinner. The lines between government business and private commerce became blurred in a way that had no precedent in American history. But the real firestorm erupted after Trump left office in 2021. In August 2022, the FBI executed a search warrant at the estate, the first time such an action was taken against a former president. The images released afterwards shocked the nation. Boxes of highly classified government documents, some marked top secret, were found in the most mundane places, from an ornate storage room to a chandeliered bathroom. Suddenly, the sea-to-lake palace was no longer just a social club. It was a central piece of evidence in a federal criminal investigation. Conclusion: the mirror of a nation. Today, Mar-a-Lago remains a paradox. To his supporters, the estate is a symbol of a man who fought the elites to give power back to the people. To his detractors, it is a monument to ego, excess, and a dangerous disregard for the rules. In many ways, the story of Mar-a-Lago is the story of America itself over the last century. It is a story of new money trying to force its way into the room. It is a story of the widening gap between those who live in the gold leaf rooms and those who scrub the floors. And finally, it is a story of how a private dream can grow so large that it eventually consumes the national conversation. Marjorie Post wanted a house that would never be forgotten. 100 years later, as the waves of the Atlantic continue to hit its seawall, it's safe to say she got exactly what she wanted. The mansion stands, the gold still glimmers, and the world is still watching.